Hello and welcome to Skeindeer Knits. My name is Ellie and I am a Norwegian living and knitting in London, and you can find me as a designer on Ravelry as Skeindeer Knits, and you can find me on Instagram as Skeindeer. But in terms of the best point of contact is the Ravelry group Skeindeer Knits, which is where we are talking about anything to do with my patterns, any knit-alongs that is being run through this podcast, and any other stuff. Chatter, questions, babbling, what have you, that would be the place to do it. I have taken kind of great measures to make it a clear and organized group so that you can find a dedicated thread for each pattern or collection of mine. There's also a dedicated thread for knit-alongs and FO threads, so finished objects. I have now opened one for the Vinterfjell cal, that is one of the knit-alongs that I'm hosting. So that means we've been knitting this sweater together now for 3 months, and the initial intention was to have it going for 3 months, but since I've been a bit lax with saying when the end date is, because I hadn't really decided, it seems like everyone is agreeing with me that the end of June seems doable. And you know, before you know it, there will be a child size version of this sweater as well, so who knows, maybe there will be another cal for that. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe I shouldn't overdo the knit-alongs. Famous last words. So yeah, there is a finished objects thread for that. Just make sure you get your photo in time for, what, the end of June. It's already June. My goodness. I am also running 2 other knit-alongs. One is the year-long knit-along, which has a deadline at New Year's Eve, I suppose. You are basically to knit 6 pairs of colorwork mittens for the duration of 2018. They cannot have been started before the year, and they obviously have to be finished before the end of the year. And that has just a chatter thread right now. There's no FO thread. You just kind of post your mittens. You can give feedback there because there's, you know, chatter is allowed, and I really love that thread. I'm so glad I took the plunge and did a year-long knit-along because it's been so much fun. You guys are making it the best, and I hope we can do this thing annually. The third knit-along I'm doing is the Skeindeer sock-along, which I asked for a suggested end date from you guys. You may have suggested one already, but I just returned from Ródos in Greece yesterday, so I haven't actually checked anything before recording this. So bear with me on that. I was also thinking we can do that until the end of June, and I don't think that's too soon of a deadline because they're just socks and they're really fast. If you just cast them on now, you could probably do all 6 pairs, sorry, by the end of the deadline, although you only have to do 1 pair of either of my sock patterns. But yeah, the particular DK Sport Weight sock yarn socks, they are very fast, so you will have time regardless. But yeah, I think the end of June would be a good end date, so just let me know what you think. Oh god, I know when you can say something in 1 word, I choose 5. That's kind of how I roll. So if you're new to this podcast, welcome. Just better get used to this, and if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. So nice of you to check out this podcast again. I'm glad that you find it worthwhile coming back to. I'm a bit just out of it just because I skipped a week, and apparently that's thrown me completely off. Also I'm in Greek time, so even though it's 11 o'clock here, it feels like 1 o'clock. And also I usually record earlier than 11, so everything's so odd. But I like the natural daylight we have today. There's definitely no chance of sun, and I'm loving it after having been in Greece. I was about to say in Greek. That's after having been in Greece for a week with full-on sun, near 30-degree weather. Luckily it wasn't 30 because that's usually when I pass out. Not really, but I can appreciate a bit of cold and a bit of clouds, quite frankly. If I didn't mention it already, that is the Vinterfjell sweater that we have a cal for, and it has changed its name to Vinterfjell. I just thought I'd mention that one last time. I mentioned it in the 2 previous episodes, so hopefully nobody has missed out on that. But if this is news to you, I strongly suggest checking out episode 70. So let's move on. First part of my works in progress is going to be a bit odd because I actually don't remember half of the projects because it's been 2 weeks since I shared anything, so I'm gonna have to kind of remind myself as I'm showing you this. But yeah, I have been working more on my floof sweater. It lives in my Plystre zip zipper bag that came with my Plystre backpack, which is a Norwegian bag maker for knitters. Though I'm sure they would be great for people that don't knit as well. This is Floof right now. I'm holding it kind of upside down, so we got the neck and shoulder pieces here. It smells a bit funny because there's spinning oil on my yarn, but that will be fine. I don't know why I mentioned that because you can't tell. We have a sleeve. I'm pretty sure I had that sleeve last time, and I've sort of started the other sleeve, or maybe it's the other way around. I don't know. But right now it's just like a sweater snake. It will have a body, not a very long one, but it will have a body. Once I'm done, there will be a call out for test knitters, etc. But until then, I'm just knitting and knitting, and I'm really excited about this. It's just something very different to what I normally design, hoping to either hit a different crowd or give the same audience I already have as something very different to try. Regardless, I am very optimistic about this one. Throwing myself a bit on the mohair bandwagon. Didn't think I'd do that. You remember when I was knitting my last and first actually mohair sweater, I thought to myself, is this going to be the last time I do this? Not because I'm not enjoying it, just because I don't see myself having any more of these. And then I came up with this new way of doing it. That was like, well, I need that, and so does the world. So there we are. I will be saying more about the yarn and the shapes and all of that stuff closer to the call out for test knitters and publication and that kind of thing. It really doesn't take long to knit at all. It's just that I am working on so many things at the same time, and I have been away, and I did not bring a mohair sweater project with me to hot Greece, so that's why I haven't really touched it since, but it could have been done if I wasn't working on so many things. Just as a heads up, there isn't really much colour work in this episode. I mean, I do pride myself with my colour work knitting, and it's not for lack of having done colour work knitting, mind you. I've done lots, but they're all kind of secret in their own way. Some is obviously for the upcoming Mitten Club, some is for an upcoming publication, and another one I just kind of decided to keep a secret until I publish it, because I just like to. So we're just going to look at the non-colour work bits for now. The other one is the Sans Serif cardigan by Elizabeth Dorothy, which I am making for my grandmother. And I have made some substantial progress since the last time we saw each other. This is the cardigan in question. And for anyone who's like a bit bothered that I didn't show you the other one clearly enough, it's like I said, just because I'm trying to keep it a bit under wraps. But this one, I'm going to try my best to show you as clearly as possible. So I've done this sleeve. Alternated skeins, that's why it looks a bit stripy, but at least it doesn't pull. And I realise it's very snug, and my grandmother is not going to like a snug sleeve. So this will be sent to the frog pond, just up to here, happy with the shoulder cap. And I'm now, before I do that, just knitting this sleeve the way I want it. And I'm doing it in slightly different, some odd ways. I'm going up half a needle size for the sleeve. It could look a bit funny, but I do think it will be comfortable for my grandma, and that's really what counts in the end. I'm also decreasing a bit less frequently, so it may in the end actually have a bit more stitches than called for, but I just have to think of who's receiving this. A bit worried that the whole shoulder shape might be a bit too fitted for her taste, but it's gonna look really nice, and hopefully she won't mind, and I think she's gonna love this yarn. It's Malabriga Rios, and I'm sorry I don't remember the colorway. It might be on some label around here somewhere, but yeah, bear with me on that. This will be talked about for a while still, so we will find out in due time, but I don't think they have any colorways that resemble this one, so if you can look it up on the website, the one that resembles this is the one. So there we are. I have not done any waist decreases, but I am doing some hip increases because my grandmother said she didn't want, well, my aunt has told my mum that their mom does not want anything fitted, but I figured she would like this cardigan to be at least a bit roomy around her hips, so I'm doing that. This is the front. I am knitting this flat. There's a lot of purling involved, but I'm doing it. The colour is just so scrumptious. The yarn actually I put in my de-stash bag. I'm really kind of done with superwash yarn for garments, but I don't think my grandmother is at all. I think she would absolutely love wearing this. I think it's also safe with her because she tends to put everything in the washer and dryer nowadays. So yeah, had to take it out of the de-stash bag and actually start working with it again. I only have, I think, one superwash sweater quantity in that bag now, and I'm already thinking it could be a really lovely boxy. So yeah, I have a hard time parting with my yarn. I didn't think I did, but apparently I do. So yeah, there's a lot of yarns in circulation in this cardigan, and they're all currently attached to my work. So I'm a little bit worried that maybe I don't have enough. According to the pattern, I don't have enough, so that wouldn't be too surprising. So I might just head up to my local yarn shop that I know carry this yarn and pick up a skein. I don't particularly care that it's not on the same dye lot, because I can just alternate and it will be alright. And yeah, it lives in this boxy animal bag with sort of fringe bag construction that my mom made me. It's bigger than a fringe bag, so fits pretty much everything with this cardigan, which is grand. So I thought I'd mention this cardigan briefly. This is the Hodgson's Joy pronunciation. It's by Sarah Hatton. I'm doing it for the Fiber Company, and I'm using their new yarn Lore that will be coming out in the autumn along with this particular collection. We have a number of people taking part in this beta knit, one of which being Becky Sorensen of the Stringing It Together podcast. And yeah, like I said, not really made a huge amount of progress. There's something about this tuck stitch pattern that makes me very prone to making an error, because in my mind I just kind of lose the count of 5. I can't count to 5, apparently that's a problem. So if I don't see it, I don't see that I have counted maybe 6 instead of 5, and then I have to do this to see when I'm on the wrong side. Whereas if I join this in the round, not only would I be quicker because I purl slower, but I would actually make less errors. So if I get nervous about the deadline, I think that's just what I'm going to do, join in the round, steek. And I do think this lamb's wool is very steekable, which would be good to know as well. I'm sure many would be curious as to finding that out. And the main thing that counts, you know, is that this project is as close to the original design that I am beta knitting for. So my main concern is that, and making the deadline, because if it's one thing that counts when you do this kind of beta knit or test knit or have you sample knitting even, is making a deadline. That's like number one. I've often wondered if I should do a video on test knitting and kind of the design progress or process, but I'm still kind of learning this stuff myself. But I do have a lot of knowledge that I often experience that other people are unaware of, and it would be really useful if we all knew this kind of thing. I mean, I just put out the call for test knit now, for instance, and there's a lot of things that is kind of obvious to me, but for someone who actually hasn't taken part of this process, it's not. And that's not saying that I am doing it all right and everyone else is doing it wrong, not at all, because I should already have sent out the test knit and I haven't. So, you know, amateur point for me there. But speaking of making specialized videos, I asked in the last episode if you would like a Q&A episode, and also if you would like an episode where I talk about how to podcast. And you seem positive to both, so I will be doing both. If you want me to do a Q&A episode, really all you need to do is put a question into the questions and answers and suggestions thread in my Ravelry group. It's a thread that has been kind of used to answer any sort of questions lately. But if the question asked is something I think I should be answering and also want to answer, you know, depending if it's personal, I will kind of, obviously, I get to choose. But it has been used to just be a knitting help desk, which isn't really the intention, but it's kind of hard to explain to anyone new to that thread that that's not the point. So I'm just going to be selective. I think that's the best way forward. So if you have a question you'd like to have in a Q&A video, you can put it there and I will go through the thread and just choose whichever I choose on various grounds. So the main thing I'm thinking for that kind of theme is just think about what kind of questions is reasonable to ask on a podcast. So a technique question is maybe not the best way. The best kind of question for this, you know, saying, oh, I'm doing this thing, but what do you think if I do that thing? Kind of, you know, knitting support thing. That's not the point. It's supposed to be more of a higher level kind of thing. You kind of know what I mean. I'm not being super strict about this, just to give you a general idea. And yeah, you can ask anything. You can ask stuff to do with knitting, to do with me, to do with this, to do with London. I mean, I'm keeping it very open. But yeah, you put it there. When I see that I have enough to go on to fill a video or something like that, then I'll do that. As for the other specialized video I talked about earlier, was a sort of how to podcast. If you have any specific questions for that, you can put that in the same thread. I am able to see which kind of question is which kind. I'm not a robot, so that should be fine. And yeah, I have some ideas for that kind of video, some tips and tricks and some things to maybe just ease the minds of the newbie, because I think we feel like we need to do all these things and I think we need to yank it down a bit. I don't think it needs to be all that. But that's something for me to cover in that video in the future whenever I get around to do one. So that was a bit of works in progress intermission. Let's get back to the works in progress. I don't have any finished objects. I've got a lot of things I worked on though. The major project for this particular episode, and I'm sorry I don't know the name of the bag maker, I'm just holding it up here to tease you. My exploration station. Now, you will know that this has been quite the UFO since last summer, actually. There's a lot of reasons why it became a UFO. It's memories and stuff and things like that, but mainly just brioche. I wanted to do a one Passed Brioche, which Nathan Taylor of the Sock Mortician podcast has a great video of on YouTube. And so I'd managed to establish the first row of brioche in my exploration station. And then I felt a bit stuck, because how do I integrate that with the I-cord on the side of that shawl? And how does it really work? And increasing, and it's a lot to take in at once. So I've been told that Aileen has also had a go at one Passed Brioche, and she'd be going to the Ródos knitting retreat that I've just come home from, and also so would Nathan. And so I thought, well, I will have two very clever brains there that have already nailed the basics that could maybe help me out. And I know that Aileen is already working on an exploration station. I wonder if it's her second, actually. So I thought now is the time to resurrect this UFO. And I had not anticipated just how much help I would need with this. I thought it would be fairly straightforward, but it is a bit of an undeveloped method, this one Passed Brioche. So before I get into what happened in the end, I want to talk to you a bit more about what one Passed Brioche is. It's essentially, you know, when you work brioche, if you ever have, if you haven't, I will explain it briefly. A two-color brioche, you essentially work each row twice. You do one where you slip some stitches and then you work some in color A, and then you do it again where you slip the ones you did in color A on, and then you do color B in the other stitches that you slipped previously. And for someone who does a lot of stranded color work, that is a very hard pill to swallow, because I know I can hold two colors in one row and work them both and not have to slip half the stitches and go back and do it again. Like, that to me just makes no sense. And then I was told that there is this one Passed Brioche method where you essentially just work one row twice. You carry two colors and you can do that, you know, holding it one in each hand like Nathan does, or one in one hand the way I do. Either way it works out really well. And so I wanted to do that, and I did not want to progress with my exploration station until I had nailed that. So I have been super fortunate to have a very patient Nathan sit next to me and just work out this thing with me, because it's not a fully developed method yet. And I think if you guys are really into this idea of one Passed Brioche, and maybe politely, carefully nudge him a bit and say that's something you would be interested in, because I think that is the next step in brioche. I think, you know, people like Nancy Marchand and Stephen West have taken brioche really, really far, and then you've got geniuses like Knit Graffiti. I forgot her real name, I'm sorry, but she's brilliant. You know, we've had these clever minds to take brioche up until where it's right now, and I think the next step is to see how you can work it in one row. Not just for lazy people like myself, but because I actually think it looks nicer. Basically, what Nathan says is that brioche is double knitting, and as you know, Nathan's specialty is double knitting, and he's not saying it to mean that it's like double knitting. It is actually double knitting, because you have a knit stitch on your side and a facing purl stitch on the other that becomes a knit stitch on the other side. It is essentially the same principles as double knitting. There isn't a huge difference. Obviously you got the kind of yarn overs that become the shawls, and that is what makes it brioche, but it follows the same principles. And what you get when you knit one pass is actually that the yarn overs and the knitted stitches and purl stitches, of course, become more interlinked, and I think it looks really nice and squishy and gives it a bit of a, it also spreads it out a little bit. Actually, it looks really nice. I can show you my swatch. I did a swatch last year. So top of the swatch is my conventional 2 pass brioche, and then it's the 1 pass brioche, and look how open it is. It opens up so much more. Obviously this is also closer to the cast on, so there's a difference there. It really likes my eyes, this camera. There we are. You can see it. It's just, yeah, it opens up, and there's a bit of a jog between the two, which is why you can't really do both in one project, turns out. I didn't do that, luckily. I had set up my shawl to do a 1 pass brioche. Mind blank. It's really taken a lot of brain power, and it's taken a lot of brain power of Nathan, and I'm so grateful and feeling slightly guilty how much time of his short stay at the knitting retreat that he spent on my shawl. And I hope it has benefited him in developing the 1 pass brioche technique further, because I think it's so worthwhile getting it out there and showing people how not just efficiently but attractively work your brioche, as if brioche wasn't attractive already. But yeah, in addition to that, I think it will look nicer because you actually get to match the front and the back more. So usually with brioche, and maybe that's just me, but I always feel like the side that faces you first always looks nicer than the back side. You know, you could argue that there isn't a front and back in brioche, but there kind of is. If you've done a bit of patterning in brioche, using directions, that kind of thing, you will see often there's one side where the lines continue more, and then on the back side they're sort of interrupted. Whereas if you do a 1 pass brioche, that shouldn't be the case. It should really match up perfectly the way it does in double knitting without brioche. And that's why I think this is really interesting, because you could actually improve upon some already pretty brilliant brioche patterns out there. And I'm really intrigued to do that, but right now I only know the basics, and thanks to Nathan I know it actually really well. And I'm very proud to say that I have finished the brioche section of my exploration station. Not only have I finished it, but it has no errors in it. It was full of errors by the time I was left to my own devices with this, because Nathan had to leave the knitting retreat a bit earlier than planned, and it was just in the nick of time for me to actually have gained the knowledge to fix my errors and understand where they were coming from. So now this whole brioche section here is absolutely perfect. There's just no errors, and the backside looks just as nice as the front. So wow. Obviously there's the garter transitions. They're just gonna be what they are, you know, it's garter. I'm a bit mid-row here, so this looks a bit wonky, but hopefully you can see where my exploration station is going. And yes, half the reason I actually wanted to do the 1 pass brioche when I didn't realize just how nice it was is because I've added 2 extra wedges to make an even larger exploration station than normal. And I haven't mentioned that already, but it's a design by Stephen West. It was a Mr. Knit Along many years ago, and it's since been a huge hit in the knitting world, and I don't even wonder why, because it's been so much fun to work. It really is speedy and varied in the beginning, and even the later wedges weren't much of a slog. Obviously the 2 extra ones that I added were a bit more slow, because you get more and more stitches as you do it, which is why I have so many stitches for my brioche, and also why I'm sort of having a break now that I'm doing the slip stitch pattern, which I was tempted to turn into an eyelet pattern, but I was tricked. So now I'm doing slip stitches after all. So that's all I have to say about that shawl, but it's not all I have to say about 1 pass brioche. I know, I was joking about this earlier in this the day and age of this podcast, that I will join the brioche party when everyone else is done with it. And now I don't think people are done with brioche, but I'm very late to the party, and we kind of all saw this coming, I think. That's just how I am with trends. I'm never trendy. So when I got home last night, I was knackered. I really just wanted to sleep, even though it was actually the middle of the day, because I left about noon from Ródos and got here 3, 4 o'clock. I think I landed about 3, and then I was here between 4 and 5. And whilst being super sleepy, I was also really into the idea of casting on a new shawl project, which I have no business doing given the time pressure of a lot of projects I've got going, because I haven't had enough of one Passed Brioche. And I had been browsing my Ravelry, so I'd gone to the pattern search, the advanced pattern search. I had ticked in my library and brioche, and so all the patterns that came up were patterns I already own, paid for or not, that are in brioche stitch. And I was reminded that I have a pattern with brioche in my queue, which is the Oracle Shawl by Kristen of the Yarngasm podcast and Wool and Vine Yarns. And I was actually fortunate enough to order a kit from her when she was doing Oracle kits, which she might still be doing, I don't know. So I asked her if I could buy a kit from hers, and she asked me what colours, and I'm like, I don't know, but you know me, so you choose colours. And she chose some really perfect colours, but I just haven't gotten around to cast on this shawl because I felt like I needed to nail brioche in my current whip before I had a go at this shawl, because it has a fair bit of brioche in it. And the other thing I have done differently than introducing one Passed Brioche is I couldn't really choose between the Oracle shawl and the Half Moon Oracle shawl. Now the Oracle shawl is a full pie shawl, which we call just pie shawls, although technically it requires 2 times pi to make a circle. Anyway, that's maths. The Half Moon Oracle shawl is what we call a half pie shawl, which technically we call a pie shawl. It's a half circle, to put it simply. And she's got both versions as separate patterns. And you could obviously fold a full Oracle shawl double, yeah, and get a kind of double-sided half circle shawl. And I thought about that, but I have actually come across a 3/4 pie shawl earlier, and that is what I wanted to do with the Oracle shawl. So I'm kind of doing something in between the 2 available patterns, and this is what I've got. So if you can see that it's not a half circle, then it would look this way. It's not a full circle, because then it would face and be in the round. I've just taken out a 1/4 from a full circle, or added a 1/4 to the half circle. Hope that makes sense. So this is Wool and Vine yarn. It's in her the single ply merino base of hers. I am using the Plume colorway, which is a lovely light burgundy pink sort of color, and the black Grim colorway, which I love. It might just be my favorite colorway of hers, which I know sounds a bit weird because it's essentially black, but it's a very, very nice black. And if you've seen the Syria cardigan that she's been working on in this color, it's nice. It's really nice, and I hope she finishes it because it's very pretty. Wink wink. We've been matching cardigan twins once, so why not do it again, right? So I've really enjoyed this one, and actually what I found out waking up this morning, I woke up at 6 because I'm still on Greek time, which I think I'm gonna keep doing. It's pretty good. I found that my stitch count was off. I'm trying to alter my stitch count up here so I have enough stitches to have a 3/4 pie instead of a full or half, and I was off by like 2 stitches. I had 2 stitches too many here, which led to 4 stitches too many here, and then 5 at some point, which I don't know how happened. So I actually had to rip back the brioche that I'd done last night, and I didn't even mind because I am enjoying one Passed Brioche that much that I did not mind. It's just 8 rows, I think. Could be wrong, but it's just 8. It's not 16, it's 8 because one pass. So I did not mind whatsoever. I just ripped back and adjusted my stitch count so that I was not making too much brioche. Apparently that's a risk now. And I have now started the lace, and I have done, I think, 2/3 of it, maybe, give or take. So I just have a couple of rows more, maybe 4, maybe, I don't know, to do that so I can do more one Passed Brioche. I am really enjoying it, and I think this is just the perfect time for me to do this shawl, which is why I cast on now, even though, like I said, I have no business starting more whips because I have all these design duties that I have deadlines. There is the beta knit for the fiber company. There are garments that I want to have designed ready for the autumn, which means, you know, test knitters need time. I have a lot of accessory knits that are very exciting and coming soon, whether for the club or other things. So it just had to happen. No apologizing, apologies, English. So this is the funny thing that happened with me in Ródos, and I hope nobody noticed, but I'm sure everyone did. I decided not to comment on it. But having been away from London for a week and around people with all sorts of accents, be it Greek or Canadian or Scottish or Dutch, British, I'm trying to think of every individual who was there. There was a lot of accents from all over the world, and here I am with my sort of Norwenglish, mostly sort of Londonish, maybe a bit northern, don't know why, completely losing my accent and taking on everyone else's. And I feel like people may have felt like I was making fun. I don't do this on purpose. I'm just a chameleon when it comes to language. Every time I talk to my South African flatmate, I sound South African. Every time I talk to my Bulgarian flatmate who's been living in the States for a long time, I start sounding like her. It's just a thing that I do. I'm sorry. But I realized I started sounding very strange at the end of the trip, so I actually just stopped talking and I made very short sentences. It was just really odd. It was really odd. I'm still kind of coming back to my own comfortable self, but yeah, language is funny, and I don't know how I have managed to become a fairly fluent, almost bilingual, because I'm not even the best at Norwegian sometimes, and here we are doing a podcast in English. That was a digression, as usual. So you will be hearing more about this shawl, I'm sure. I am really enjoying the one Passed Brioche, which, like I said, full credit to Nathan Taylor of the Sockmatician podcast, who's also the Sockmatician designer on Ravelry, for having invented this method, which is really clever, and I think everyone needs to get on it. And also for giving up so much of his Ródos retreat time to help me out with this. And like I said, really hope it has helped him develop this technique as well, because it is really brilliant and I want to do more brioche. And yeah, who saw this happening? That is all I can say about that. So all I have left for this episode is to talk about the Ródos retreat and talk about what I acquired during my stay there. So I think first I want to talk about the classes. I was really fortunate to be invited to the Ródos retreat that was organized by Bearded Chill of the Bearded Chill podcast. So John asked me if I wanted to teach Norwegian colorwork there this time last year, and I was like, given how well I handle heat, sure, why not? And I actually handled it surprisingly well. So despite the really high temperature in Ródos, I was able to hold 2 classes on my first day there. I hadn't even acclimatized to it. I just arrived and I was told, okay, the sessions will be 3 hours each and you'll be doing them all in one day, the first day. And I'm like, oh, cool. And so first I ran right after breakfast in the morning with a bunch of lovely attendees. Most of them I don't think knew each other, so I was sort of more of the teaching role, sharing a lot of stuff that I know about the history of the mittens, as well as being the workshop that is primarily, you know, it's not really a class, it's a workshop knitting class. So I gave them some options from my last year's club mittens to cast on. Some had already knitted some and some had not, and kind of, you know, showed the old Norwegian cast on, continental knitting, how to hold the yarn just continental knitting style, but also, you know, kind of leaving it a bit open. So we kind of dived into the color work, which, you know, it's very interesting to teach beginners, because it's not like any other technique where we say do this and it will look like that. It's essentially a thing that it's something that just improves with practice, and the best advice I can give is often make sure the floats are not too tight but not too loose. and it's not really all that helpful, but people got on really well with it, and I think they understood what I meant. And I have a couple of tips and tricks to kind of make sure the floats are even. One is to stretch out your stitches when they're on your right hand needle. If they spread widely enough, you know you got some good floats there. If they don't, think back and see if you can knit them a bit looser. We talked a bit about yarn appropriateness, and there was so many stuff. I'm not going to give away my whole class, but I enjoyed it and it went really well, and I think the time frame we had was good, and it was really good that we could do it so early on the retreat, so that people could come up to me during the retreat as well and kind of, you know, show me the progress and sort of how far they come, and the next technique coming up that we didn't get to cover in the class. So that was really cool. I did another one in the afternoon with another bunch of people that knew each other a bit better, so that got into some serious chatter mode alongside the workshop, where we just delved into so many interesting subjects, which made me feel very comfortable being there, just being the quirky self that I am, and kind of feeling like I was in very good company, both as a teacher but as an attendee as well. So very fortunate to have done that, and thanks to everyone taking part and just making me a better teacher. Thank you. And I also got the privilege of attending the other classes. Now sadly I didn't get to attend John's classes for his shawls because I was teaching at the same time, but I got to attend all of Nathan's classes. So as you know, Nathan does a lot of double knitting classes. He's got two in particular. There is one on just double knitting, which helped me refresh on my double knitting skills, because I haven't really done them since I made some coasters for my grandparents years ago, probably like half a decade by now. And it was nice to refresh upon that skill, and that was really all I needed to take part in the other double knitting class, which is shaping in double knitting. And he's developed some really clever ways to shift the stitches around on both sides so that they're facing the right way, you know, kind of, you know, the difference between a knit two together and an SSK, that kind of thing. And even if you don't care about double knitting, now I do, but even if you don't, you could get a lot of usefulness out of that class. Obviously you need to know the basics of double knitting to be able to do the stuff he talks about. The stuff he talked about I found was really enlightening. It covers stuff that I already understand, but he offered a language, a terminology for it, because I often don't use words in my mind to describe what I know about knitting. That is often the biggest challenge for me when it comes to teaching, to actually verbalize and put names on the different things that we do and what we have in our hands, essentially. And Nathan offers a language for a lot of these things. One thing in particular, which I think he talked about recently on his podcast, is the difference between twisted stitches and stitch mount. So I kind of already forgot some of the words. I'm not going to try to explain it here, but he did explain it in his last episode, I think. And it's, you know, about kind of the leading leg and the trailing leg of the stitch. So you got the leading leg that comes from one end of the work, and the trailing leg that goes into the upcoming bit of the work, and being in the front of the needle or the back of the needle, and which you knit into there is what makes a stitch twisted. It's not actually how the stitch itself is placed on the needle, because the stitch you're twisting is essentially the one below once you knit it into that stitch. It's so that stitch is the one that becomes twisted. I'm not explaining it well here, but I think Nathan did a really good job of putting words to these things, which I think solidifies it a bit more in our minds and makes the very skeleton of knitting easier to understand, because I think that is the biggest skill in knitting. No matter what technique you're into, it's understanding the structure. I think if you can read your knitting, you're golden. Like, that is the #1 skill in knitting. It doesn't matter if you can't do lace or brioche or color work. Being able to read your knitting and understand the very construction of it, the placement of stitches, whether they're twisted or not, how they're mounted, that kind of thing, I think is the most important thing. And I just wish that when I was learning how to knit, someone would have told me how to do each row in different colors, because then I would have seen it. It would have been so plain to see. Because when you're a new knitter, you can't even separate the rows, you just see it all as a mass. So I have lots of thoughts about that now, and I found it really illuminating, and I think he could actually take half of that class and turn it into a read your knitting class, which is something I think someone needs to do soon, because that is That is a skill. Also, I got to take part in the Intarsia class, which was really cool. It's a technique where you essentially knit both stranded and intarsia, but sort of neither all at once. So it's a way to make sure that you have just one piece of stranded knitting in the work that you knit in the round, but without carrying the floating around. I think that's all I'm going to say about that, because it's his technique and he's still refining it and he's teaching it in his exclusive classes, so you're going to have to find out more there. But I think he also has a pattern for it, so that's also a way to find out. But it was really clever. That about sums up my first couple of days in Ródos. I really enjoyed it. It was really good to get to know Nathan better, because it's kind of ridiculous that we had to go all the way to Greece to do so, because we live in the same city. We even live sort of roughly on the same side of the city, go to the same knit night, but you know, someone's leading a very busy life. That's why I had to leave early, so it's kind of nice to have those few days off to actually find that we have a lot of really odd things in common. And I say that with no judgment. It was like anything, apologies, there's a big digger outside, but yeah, anything from, I don't know, brain wiring to not being particularly keen on cucumbers. And also buying a big handful of chocolate each. That's, yeah, I bought a lot of chocolate in Greece, and I'm sure you're wondering how I could like cope with Greek food given I'm not that keen on cucumber. I don't know, I love Greek food. I've enjoyed the food over there so much. I can handle a bit of tzatziki here and there on Greek salad, but yeah, I will be leaving the cucumber aside. It's funny, most people just say that cucumbers don't taste like anything, but I would argue that that cucumber just leaves its little icky flavor on everything. I'm just not into cucumber, and it's been good to find a kindred spirit in the whole cucumber situation. But oh my god, I've enjoyed the food so much. The hotel made great food. We went to awesome places to eat, anything from really nice restaurants to the local souvlaki hub where we just got what's essentially Greek fast food. But oh my god, so delicious. I am gonna have to go on a strict like oatmeal and omelette diet from now on, just to save you know, my wardrobe and my money to some extent. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of Mediterranean food. My stomach is definitely more Mediterranean than Norwegian, because I'm not that keen on the food from up there. I love Turkish food, and Greek food is fairly close to that. I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone Greek, but honestly, my palate loves both, and I've had a very good food week, shall we say. Now, the rest of the week was filled with all sorts of things, from being just lazy in the heat to exploring Ródos City to going on excursions, and I will put lots of little footage at the end of the video. We also had a little bit of a market, and there were lots of makers there attending the festival that were selling their things, and I decided, well, first I decided I wasn't going to buy anything because I'm so sensible, blah blah blah. Didn't happen. What I decided was to actually buy stuff from my Greek friends who make stuff, because when in Greece, that's what you do. So, first thing I did was buying some yarn. So I got 2 skeins from the amazing Liz of Trellis yarns. I just thought these went really well together, and for some reason these colors just spoke to me, even though they're both very different from what I usually gravitate to. This is a very pale color. It's called something latte. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be something rude, but definitely something to do with latte, and it does have that color of the sort of latte foam. And I love how Liz always makes sure to match her labels to her yarn, so she always goes with the label that's closer in color. So this one has a more orange label because there's a slight orange hue to this sort of latte foam color, and it's nice. And I thought it would be a great neutral to this as a contrast. And this is the Outlander colorway of hers. It's nice and green, and I already have a design in mind for this. I've said too much, but yeah, it's great. It's a very generous meterage superwash merino nylon. It's got 425 meters each of these, 100 grams. I know exactly what I want to make, but yeah, got some yarn. And I did not realize that when I bought a bag, it was kind of in the same color family. It really didn't occur to me until after I made both purchases. So this bag is by Manakori Design, which is my friend Eleni, who makes bags, and I always wanted her bags, and it seemed like a good opportunity to get one. So this is her little logo here, and I got the bag. It was a rough one to restrict my purchases, but I felt like in the end to go with the Greek stuff. So here's some Greek stuff. Big sweater quantity size bag, and more of an accessory service, shall we say. It's a bit of an excessive bag to actually be used for this yarn, so I probably will go for some other major project of mine, because I keep casting on garments, so you know. It's a close-up of the fabric in case you're curious. I have no idea how long I've been recording right now, because there's always been some kind of interruption, being the digging, building stuff going on outside, to the light that's going all wrong. How do you do that? To food delivery and buzzing phone, everything. So if something is a bit off, that's the reason why. Now, the other stuff I have acquired has actually all been very generously given to me by lovely people in the retreat. First I got this fridge magnet from Eleni and Phil, who live in Athens and came for the retreat. And I have this thing, and I don't think they knew this, but I have this thing that when I go to Wales or Scotland, I have to buy a sheep themed souvenir, which in Wales and Scotland is pretty easy. In Greece, not so much. But they found one. It says handmade in Greece on the backside, and the fridge magnet says this. And I think it's perfect for me. It's really, like, it's something I need to tell myself sometimes, and it's something that I often can't help. So I really appreciated that. So thank you guys so much. And I also got a couple of things from Laura, who came all the way from Canada. She gave us all some kiwit fiber. It's from the mussels, which they have in Canada. We also have these in Norway. Came from Canada, and here's some sample yarn from theirs. It's really fluffed up being in my bag, so it gives some idea of how this super soft fiber knits up. I'm just going to keep them as stitch markers, I think. I think they're just really cute. I also got this sort of wristband from Canada. It says Canada with maple leaves on, which you can use for all sorts of things. She suggested having it around your bottle so you can attach a pen to your bottle when you have to carry lots of stuff, which is just Laura in a nutcase. I've never seen anyone as practical and prepared as Laura. Oh my gosh, she had everything with her in very like compactly packed bag. She had a stapler in there when we needed one. It was incredible just how she's thought about everything. Superwoman, honestly. And she even offered me a very practical solution to my stitch marker nightmare, because while I'm not the biggest buyer of stitch markers, I've certainly acquired a good number of them, and I have no idea how to store them until Laura gave me this ring, which is like eureka. So all my stitch markers are hung here now, even these icky ones I got off eBay that I really don't care for, and all the pretty ones that people have given me, that I have bought when being at certain events, and it's just all very special. So thank you so much, Laura. I didn't know I needed this as much as I really did. And I also actually ended up nominating Laura for being kind of the most curious attendant of the classes. We were all asked to, well, those of us kind of teaching and working for the retreat, asked to nominate winners for a Oscar. So every attendee got an Oscar for something, I think. And when Laura got this, for being like the most inquisitive class partaker, she gave it to me, because she really had to keep her baggage light, because she had gotten a lot of things in there. So I got another sheep themed knitting grease thing. This is probably going to be an oceans bag or a small project bag. It's just this size, and I mean, it's from Ródos. It's got sheep. I don't know why I didn't find any of these sheep things, but I have two now, and I'm really happy. So thank you so much for that. Elaine and Phil also gave me a bunch of treats. and this is probably the only one I have left. There might be the odd few chocolates in my project bags, which makes me very excited that there's like maybe a knitted shawl in there, but also a chocolate bar for me waiting. I like that. Lastly, guys, me kind of shamelessly drooling over Helen's project bag from Antler and Acorn. I do this sometimes. This is tangent. A friend of mine, she once bought a bunch of, I think, Tetley's tea to Norway. And I was just like, what is it with this tea? I've never seen this kind of tea before, and I see it everywhere in the UK, and it's just like, what's the deal with this tea? Is it nice? And she's like, sure, yes, do you want some, Ellie? I'm like, no, that's not what I meant. I'm just like really curious about this tea, and I like get really enthusiastic about it. And what I sound like is like, Hinted, give it to me. And I hope I didn't sound like that, because amazing Helen, who lives just outside London, I believe, gave me this bag. Which, honestly, I didn't know what to say. She just brought this as a project bag for her to use, and I've been looking into getting an Antler and Acorn bag for a long time, but every time I go into that Etsy shop, it doesn't have the bags, and I want the bags, and I have a bag. So thank you so much, Helen. Honestly, this is beautiful. It has an acorn on the zipper because it's, after all, Antler and Acorn, as you can see here. And it's got a huge sheep head on it, and it's got a box bottom. This is just perfection. It has pockets, and oh, look at that. Thank you so much. Seriously, yeah, words cannot even. But I have an Antler and Acorn bag. It's beautiful. Okay, I think that's all I have for the retreat. So many thoughts and feelings. I have a proper Greece hangover now, and it's probably gonna get even worse now that I'm gonna be done talking about it. And I have to go back to like real life and do life stuff and responsible adult things and make my own food. But I've really enjoyed the retreat. I was in a bit of a funky state. I have been for the better of the last 1 year or so. And it's not really been something I've been able to shake off, but I've kind of been the best version of me that I could be given those circumstances and how I was feeling. And I hope I wasn't too inapproachable, because sometimes I need a week to just get used to my surroundings and the people there, and then I feel like almost I wish I had a second chance to be there and like talk to everyone way more than I did, because everyone were really lovely. And it's weird how you can like miss a bunch of people after having just been around them for 1 week, even though I was primarily really quiet, partially because I don't deal with heat very well, and partially because I am a quiet person. But I miss everyone, and it was really good. And I hope to see those of you who attended in future yarn festivals and yarn events, whichever those are. I'm going to try to attend them all, because that's the kind of person I am. So many thoughts and feels, and I'm proud of myself for having managed to do this whole trip on my own and coped with the heat, not getting sunburnt, actually have a bit of a tan. You may not think this is a tan skin, but for me this is tan. It's like even blowing out, but in my mind this is tan. Okay, this is a different, it's less blue in my on my arms. But I am not sunburnt, so that's pretty good. I think I'm running out of stuff to say. All the feels to everyone. I wish I'd talked to everyone 10 times as much as I did. But hey, next time. And for anyone curious what I'm wearing, last thing. Fern and Feather by Jennifer Stangas, the brilliant Jennifer Stangas. And I am just celebrating the fact that I can wear woolly jumpers again, because Britain is cold and clouded and I love it. So I will see you guys next time. Bye.